This is Tulagi, a small island off the southern end of Guadalcanal. We stopped for fuel before moving on to Espiritu Santo in the New Hebrides Islands. Espiritu was the setting for the Michener musical South Pacific. When he was here 3 years ago, it was a South Sea paradise. And now it was overcrowded and sinking harbor that could not handle the influx of ships preparing for the next operation.
Well, at Espiritu, we had the second of our baseball games. Since we had been constantly at sea for 6 weeks, ever since leaving Pearl Harbor, our guys were eager to get ashore. We had another ball game scheduled.
This time there was no secret. We were escorting the 27th Infantry Division to Okinawa with a brief stopover at Ulithi. This was another big convoy, and the tension was building. We had heard all about kamikazes. The convoy at this time had doubled in size when we left Ulithi. We had an assortment of amphibious ships, more tankers, and more cargo ships. Also several more mine sightings, an abandoned barge, other floating objects like logs, and everything had to be investigated and, if possible, destroyed by gunfire. It was the first week of April 1945. There were numerous calls to battle stations and not much sleep. After dropping the convoy at the staging area at Hagushi Anchorage, that's off the southern tip of Okinawa, here seen at the southeast corner of this map, we moved up to the picket duty off the island of Nishima, about 2/3 of the way up the east coast. The famed war correspondent Ernie Pyle was killed there about that time, and in the next 3 days, we went to battle stations 12 times.
The 1.1-inch quadruple mount machine gun was supposed to be our primary air defense weapon. It was designed back in the 1920s for use on heavy ships. When World War II began, the Navy developed a superior weapon, the twin 40mm. The Navy pulled the 1.1s off the regular fleet and gave them to DEs. Thanks a lot. The vibration was too much for the light hull of a DE, so the gun jammed after a few rounds. During the attack on the Rall, I could see by the time that the kamikaze hit, only one barrel of the 1.1 was still firing. Later, an unexploded projector was found embedded in the engine of the kamikaze. On the other hand, we did get a break. At our last stop in Ulithi, the Rall was provided with a small quantity of new anti-aircraft ammunition for our 3-inch 50. These projectiles had a magnetic exploder. If the projectile came within 30 feet of the target, it would explode. It still takes very good shooting to come that close to a plane moving 250 miles an hour.
This is my gun, the 3-inch 50. And we had practiced our loading so that we could fire a round every 3 seconds. And what I remember when the kamikaze came toward our ship, I had him in my sights all the way. But the gunnery officer told me to hold my fire because there was a friendly airplane behind the Japanese kamikaze. But I followed that kamikaze straight into our ship. The next thing I remember, I was laying on the deck, and Fontana was giving me first aid.
This is not our photo, but it is almost exactly as we saw it. The plane was being shot to pieces, but it kept boring in on us. Again, not our ship, but this is what it looked like when a DE gets hit. Notice a big flash of flame as the gasoline explodes, then the dimmer flash of the bomb blast, just like with us, after the bomb passed completely through the ship. A picture taken from the flying bridge a few seconds after the hit. Everyone is still looking aft. Not so with our gunners. There were 3 more suicide planes out there, and one was headed straight for the bridge. Schroeder, a gunner on a 20mm gun, had a piece of shrapnel through his lung, yet he was able to fire a short burst, less than 10 rounds, straight into the engine of another plane. It crashed about 500 yards off the port beam. When the first kamikaze was out of the field of fire for Gun 1, it quickly switched sides from starboard to port and knocked out a plane coming from aft on the port side. Now there was just one more plane. Here's Harry Stewart. He'll tell you what happened after the first plane hit.
Well, we had some people hit there. One of the crew, the loaders, I believe it was, got hit, got his toes practically shot off. But I saw the plane before they pushed it over the side. And it was a lot of, it had been blazing, but they got it out. Time I got down there, time I was able to leave the gun and get out. Because when this other, of course, they kept coming. There was others circling around there and just waiting. They had 20 caliber guns on their planes. That's where a lot of them done a lot of damage.
And that is what it was like. And suddenly it was silent. It was shooting like that saved us and is the reason that we were awarded the Navy Unit Citation for outstanding heroism in action. Normally, a DE is not expected to survive a coordinated attack by more than 1 or 2 planes. We shot down 3 of 5. One got away because he was not a suicide plane. He strafed us and flew away, probably a control plane meant to go home and report. The entire action, from when the group peeled off and headed for the Rall, took less than 2 minutes, about 1 minute of shooting. We expended 357 rounds of 20mm ammo, and only 110 shots were fired from the 1.1. Apparently, only 2 of the 3-inch guns were in action. They expended 43 rounds of the new ammunition with the impulse fuses in the projectile. This is a terrible scene on the fantail. Trash, a cot, structures, and some of the bodies wrapped in mattress covers, tarps, and blankets. Repair Crew 1 was largely unscathed. Most of the first aid fell to them. Sick bay had been wiped out. One corpsman worked with the doctor in the emergency first aid station in the officers' quarters. The other corpsman coordinated the efforts of the rest of us. The carnage is impossible to describe. I prefer not to even talk about it. The blood, the stench of death. Those are things one may try to forget, but cannot. The next morning, a launch is preparing to remove our dead. There is no time for services. There are chaplains ashore that attend to the burials. Each of us in our own way has said goodbye to our brothers. It took 2 hours to reach the Higuchi anchorage and moor alongside the USS Pinckney, a hospital ship. Here you see the tail section. The plane hit at the main deck with a bomb passing under the deck and demolishing sick bay, then passing through the after crew area and through the hull on the other side. The fuselage had been pushed over the side along with the pilot. The engine smashed both into the aft crew's quarters entryway and the adjoining clipping room holding the ready ammunition supply. The resulting gasoline fire gravely endangered the ship. A giant crane has tilted us to starboard, exposing the waterline. The bomb, actually a Navy shell, exited on this side and exploded 15 feet from the ship. There were about 300 shrapnel holes. Welding continues, but the flooding is under control. The bomb, per intelligence, was actually an armor-piercing naval shell. If it had hit 6 inches forward, it would have hit heavy machinery in the after motor room. The shell would have exploded on impact, and very likely it would have sunk the ship.